President Rodrigo Duterte admits paying people to defend him on social media. But Duterte says this only happened during the campaign season and not after he was elected. A University of Oxford study claims Duterte's camp paid $200,000 or 10 million pesos for a social media campaign in which volunteers and paid persons or groups used social media accounts to promote him or defend him against critics. Duterte said he has no need for online defenders now. He says, quote, "I do not need to defend myself against attacks. I stated my piece during my inauguration and my campaign." Duterte calls the University of Oxford, one of the top educational institutions in the world, a school for stupid people. A 3-part Rappler report details how groups supportive of Duterte used social media to spread propaganda on the internet. This is done partly through bots and fake accounts working together to spread the same message and create an alternative reality for real people to believe in. Duterte previously appointed one of his online defenders, entertainer Mocha Uson, as Assistant Secretary for the Presidential Communications Operations Office to show his gratitude. Malacanang also allowed pro-Duterte bloggers to cover some of his official foreign trips. It is supposedly crafting a policy to accredit them to cover presidential events.
Now we turn to a special report on Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, and the Philippines. A long, windy road, and it's important. This all begins with something Donald Trump maybe is ashamed of. He was the biggest beneficiary of fake news in 2016, and so he's been using that term, of course, against others. Remember, he got this term from work by his own supporters, who relentlessly pushed fake news stories like the false claim he was endorsed by the Pope.
This year, we saw more made-up stories, things that were literally spun out of thin air, put on the internet, usually Facebook, but they're certainly all over the web and Google searches.
Right.
And it's not true. Crazy things like the Pope endorsed Donald Trump.
The Pope did not endorse Donald Trump, but that fake news story was one of the most shared and viewed items on Facebook in the general election. It would have been easy to fact-check it or at least take it out of the news feed. But Mark Zuckerberg's company didn't do that. And while Trump benefits from fake news while using it against others as a slur, now the New York Times reporting authoritarian figures around the world using the same trick. Now, the trick works for many different reasons, but one of them is how it is still pretty easy to spread fake news on Facebook, which makes money from clicks and shares regardless of whether the content is true. Yes, undermining democracy can be profitable, although Mark Zuckerberg says this is not what he wants.
I don't want anyone to use our tools to undermine democracy. That's not what we stand for. The integrity of our elections is fundamental to democracy around the world.
That part is true. So let's put American politics to the side for a moment and dig into Facebook and the Philippines. This is where President Rodrigo Duterte is deploying a Putin playbook. Now, he is accused of human rights abuses and targeting journalists and killing them more than any other country, although Trump and Duterte hit it off at their November meeting.
We've had a great relationship. This has been very successful. On behalf of everybody, I want to thank you, and I want to thank the Philippines. Thank you very much.
Duterte under fire for having reporters killed. Trump chuckled, though, reportedly, when he called journalists spies. And Duterte recently blamed his opposition critics for fake news.
The political opposition, the guys who cannot accept defeat. They invented the fake news.
Duterte has actually been busted for pushing his own fake news and all kinds of fake accounts on Facebook during their election. And so we're reporting this tonight because it reveals two very important things. One, authoritarians, of course, will adapt any technology. It could be guns, or it could be social media, and they will be authoritarian about it. We've known that for a long time, although it's worth remembering when you think about whether these platforms are good or not. But there's a second thing. The now infamous Mark Zuckerberg defense that he and his company only really learned about all of these problems after the November U.S. election, that doesn't look very true. Because Facebook is a global company, and it was ground zero for this Putin-Duterte playbook long before Zuckerberg was playing naive about fake news after November and repeating their mantra, they're just neutral. In fact, there was a whole scandal in that country, the Philippines, over fake news and bots in their election, which was, wait for it, held in May 2016, long before ours. And as Mark knows, a lot of this actually goes back to 2015. That is when Facebook first partnered with the Filipino government over a project that Facebook had called Internet.org. It's Zuckerberg's plan to try to connect everyone in the world, and that includes poor countries, so they can be online.
Our goal with Internet.org is to help everyone connect. Internet.org is a partnership between governments, mobile operators, local entrepreneurs, and companies like Facebook. Everyone is welcome to join. We'll work with anyone who wants to join us.
He's not kidding. They will work with anyone. And I'll explain. After their initial launch, the 2016 Philippine presidential election was around the corner. And there were all kinds of candidates that wanted help from Facebook about using the platform. And Facebook did what it's done a lot. It sent 3 employees there to train candidates. That includes Duterte. Now, Facebook has a government team that does global work. It includes a former Republican operative, Katie Harbath, and includes Democrats, and they train campaigns, they say, from all sides, just like they offered Trump and Clinton training last year. But giving tips to a few campaigns in a constitutional democracy can be different than giving tips to this authoritarian, Duterte. And Facebook learned that quickly. In fact, after his team got that Facebook briefing, his allies went into overdrive, pushing fake news and accounts along with his other wider campaigns. And that brings us back to, guess who? Well, it's the Pope. He was named in a big fake news story in that country endorsing Duterte. That's false. And this is basically a kind of a sign. If you get a Pope endorsement, you are the fake news candidate.
Did you know that back in July, the Pope endorsed Donald Trump? The only thing is, it's not true. The website, Snopes, debunked the fake Pope Francis endorsement. The original fake Pope Trump endorsement got well over 800,000 shares.
Apparently, that happens in a lot of different countries. Now, there are many factors in every election, we know that, but in part with the domination of social media there, in May of 2016, Duterte won that election, and his reliance on Facebook, this is interesting for other countries, it grew stronger. He also has less limits, constitutional or otherwise, than we have in the United States. So he started doing things like banning journalists from covering his events and inauguration and streaming them instead on Facebook. So would anyone stand up to this? Yeah, there was a journalist who decided enough was enough. She started speaking out against the way Facebook was being used. Her name is Maria Ressa. She actually spent almost 2 decades on air at places like CNN, and then she had started a database to track these problems. It was called the Shark Tank, and she logged over 12 million accounts that she thought were pushing pro-Duterte messages or fake news, many allegedly fake. She even traveled to Facebook's F8 conference, met with Zuckerberg, and kept trying to sound the alarm about how Facebook was being used. She also spoke with over 50 high-ranking officers and employees at Facebook, she says, including Sheryl Sandberg. She says the only action she's seen after all of this is some paltry media literacy training, which partly puts it on consumers. Now, Facebook always says when these problems arise, they try to deal with them. And we here at The Beat reached out to a Facebook official, and they tell us that any issue that Ressa has previously alerted them to has been promptly reviewed and taken action, and when they saw violations of their standards, they would deal with them. They did not respond to some of our follow-up questions asking for details. Sheryl Sandberg, of course, made a similar claim after the U.S. election was undermined by Russia.